So for this question, they're asking us to graph this function, and it is true you could use transformations to graph it. So the square root looks something like this, and then you would say, okay, I have a -6, so that means I shift it to the right 6 units, and then a -2 means that it goes down 2 units. Now, the other thing that you could do if you really just did not know about transformations or the graphing calculator, if we give you a question like this, you can always create a t-chart. So you can always say, I need to graph this function. So I'm going to take my x is equal to 0, for example, plug in, and when I plug in 0, I get -6, because I'll have 0 minus 6 minus 2, and that's not a real number. So that tells me that at x is equal to 0, I should not see a graph. So that will eliminate C and B for us, leaving us with A versus D. All right, so let's look at plugging in. So like at A, you see that you have a negative value. Over here at D, you do not have anything for the negative value. So maybe let's plug in, for example, -10. So if I plug in -10, I still get an imaginary number inside of this radical because I have now -16 inside the radical. So that tells us that that does not work. So that tells us that A is not going to work because -10 should not have a graph. And then you look at D, let's say we plug in 10 for choice, or 10 to see if choice D works, and that would give us 10 minus 6 minus 2. The square root of 4 would give us 2 minus 2 is equal to 0, and we see that that is in fact a point on choice D. So that is one way of going about it, is you can just plug and chug, plug in different numbers, see if they are on the actual graph. I do want you to be aware, though, on your graphing calculator, what you could do is you could just type in second, and then our square root button is this little x squared button here. So if we hit the square root button by hitting second x squared, and then you can type in x minus 6, close your parentheses, and then minus 2. Okay. There's also a question on the next page where you're asked to find the absolute value function. So let's just quickly go over there and I'll explain. Again, if there is ever any question, you can always revert back to, I'm going to draw a t-chart, plug in x values. But if you needed to get an absolute value plugged in on the graphing calculator, you go to your y equals, you clear out, you hit the clear button, clear everything that's currently there. Then the absolute value comes from hitting this math button. And when you hit the math button, if you cursor over to num, you're going to see, depending on what type of calculator you have, that there is this absolute value ABS option. So you hit enter, and then you can type in the x minus 7 plus 2, and then graph it. And most of these, you see that they have the standard window from -10 to 10. So you can hit the zoom and then number 6, and that gives you your standard window. So zoom 6 gives the standard window that does seem to be pretty common for these multiple choice questions. And so that gives us our graph, but again, it's not like you absolutely have to use the graphing calculator to figure it out. You can also revert back to a t-chart.